Thank you very much. And let me begin by congratulating all those who, assuming you have not let your library fines go unpaid, will receive degrees at this anniversary convocation. I will also remind you of a prominent trademark of our university, namely the near impossibility for its members ever to agree on any issue at all. That includes the question of whether 2015 is in truth our 125th anniversary. The trustees of the university decreed early on that the founding should be dated from July 1st, 1891, the day William Rainey Harper took office as a president and began with ferocious energy and imagination to organize a new University of Chicago. Hence, the 5th anniversary was held in 1896, the 10th in 1901, and so on. A scholarly, if argumentative, faculty committee concluded that our 100th birthday be celebrated over the course of the academic year 91-92 and end on the first day of classes, which took place on October 1st, 1892. Until recently, Chicago's sweatshirts and memorabilia, the kind you bought at the bookstore instead of books, sported the university seal and the date 1892. These have now vanished. The new merchandise is decorated instead with the logo UChicago 1890, a sort of perpetual email message that is rudely rejected by my spell check. I hasten to add, however, that there is most certainly a significant case for 1890 because the university was incorporated in that year. So one can date its legal existence from 1890, its academic beginnings from 1891, and its actual operation as a university with students from 1892. As we scan the landscape of higher education, it becomes clear that all universities, whatever their similarities, have their own DNA, a distinctive character and tradition shaped by and in their foundations. You may have heard of the child who, when asked what a molecule is, described it as a thing too small to be seen by the naked observer. But since we all seem quite decently robed this afternoon, I think it an appropriate time to reflect briefly on some major strands of Chicago's constituent DNA. For that is what universities are about, to recall a university's roots, to summon the driving imperatives and basic principles that have shaped its mission, and to reconfirm their active presence in our familiar world. The university's 10th anniversary was a magnificent occasion, filled, as this past quarter has been, with lectures and conferences, speeches, concerts, and exhibitions, building dedications, and the laying of cornerstones. Mr. Rockefeller joined in, and at a special convocation like this one, exhorted graduating students to work hard and to stay absolutely clear of alcohol. President Harper found in the event an important opportunity to look back at what had been accomplished since 1891 and to reiterate the goals of his original plan for the university. In a lengthy report, he expressed pride that the university had become an institution of the first rank in a remarkably short time, garnering full respect from those who had initially been very skeptical of his project. He described the growth of the university, its faculty, students, administration, buildings, budgets, resources. And in comparing what had been completed and what had yet to be done, he spoke of having still to create schools of engineering, of music, of art, and of getting a proper medical school. And he also spoke of needing to find ways to free more faculty time for scholarly and scientific investigation. But this decennial report was much more than a record of past progress and future aspirations. On the one hand, Harper was judging his university in terms of its founding principles. On the other, he was speaking of where it had fallen short, or where initial plans needed to be rethought. It is here that we can begin more closely to detect the university's specific DNA. In Harper's words, we can glimpse the distinctive combination of the commitment to tradition and the commitment to innovation that have accompanied its history. And we can discern also the intensely critical spirit that has animated not only the university's intellectual life, but its continuing impulse toward self-examination. From the outset, Harper had linked his university to a tradition of centuries. In the neo-Gothic architecture of the campus, he saw expressed a fraternal link with the European universities of the Middle Ages. As he prepared for opening day, Harper insisted that the work of the university would begin, and here I quote him, would begin October 1st, as if it were the continuation of a work which had been conducted for 1,000 years. Yet despite his reverence for tradition, Harper had set out, above all, to challenge tradition. He wanted to create a university, not a college from which might eventually evolve a university, as in the case of most, not all, but most American universities of his time. The University of Chicago did not just happen, it was planned. It was born as a university, and this has proved a decisive fact that has much to do with making our university an institution remarkably faithful to its founding spirit, consistent over time, in an unusual singleness of focus and clarity of mission. Harper proclaimed that his plan, and here I'm quoting him again, would revolutionize college and university work in this country. It is, he said, brand splinter new, and yet solid as the ancient hills. The university idea is to be emphasized. In short, Harper wanted a research university within which a college might flourish, a university where graduate study, research, and scholarship would offer an environment framed for students and faculty alike by the highest intellectual standards and by goals that nourish strong individualism, personal independence, and an expansive range of differing views. While at the same time, he was encouraging a clarity of focus, an agreement of institutional priority among its different faculties. Hence Harper's formula of one in spirit, if not in opinion, as he put it, as the essential ethos for a university which, however powerful in its different schools and departments, might make its intellectual space a fertile source of unusual interdisciplinary breadth, one in which it was possible to cross boundaries that in most universities block their different faculties from productive communication with one another. Harper wanted to make the whole of this university somehow larger than the sum of its parts. It was his goal to make that sense of the whole triumph in the service of intellectual risk-taking and innovative scholarship, to make that an organic dimension of the university's permanent culture. The freedom of thought and expression essential to encouraging the effective vitality of these academic goals was another principle he highlighted in his decennial review. He said, when for any reason the administration of the institution or the instruction in any of its departments is changed by an influence from without, when an effort is made to dislodge an officer or professor because the political or the religious sentiment of the majority has changed, at that moment, the institution has ceased to be a university. Harper saw this freedom as an immutable condition of professorial tenure, offering security in thought and expression to any tenured professor, even when, as he put it, and I quote, he fails to exercise that quality ordinarily called common sense, which, it must be confessed, in some cases the professor lacks. I don't know what was in his mind when he said something like that, but he was certainly very clear that it was for independent-minded individuals and not for the university as an institution to take political positions. The corporate entity could not presume to speak for or against the views of its individual members, however wise or wrong-headed they might be. Harper's decennial message was not simply celebratory. He emphasized the importance of the critical spirit in approaching questions of university policy and practice. He favored publishing and making public more rather than less information, of sharing publicly accounts of problems as well as achievements, telling it like it was, even, he said, telling it to the press, a press that had so often, he complained, been ridiculously unfair to the university. You can practically see him gritting his teeth as he wrote that. But he was declaring, and it is important, that openness and candor and vigorous debate, although he and everyone else might find them difficult or uncomfortable, should always be essential hallmarks of our university. The history of our university has not been one of unbroken progress. There have been times of trouble and constraint, and even of unresolved conflict. The university has had to review and reconstitute itself in their wake. And that has helped, I think, to reinforce the seriousness and rigor that have identified this university at critical moments with thinking about the nature of higher education. At this anniversary, the university stands out still as an institution that knows its mission, that represents for many what a university can truly represent, and that has sustained its core values amidst the larger shocks and aftershocks that have recurrently affected all of higher education. We are presently at a time, and it is not the first, when the quality, the performance, and the directions of higher education and its institutions have come under intensive and often hostile questioning. Universities have become more complicated and more central to the larger society than could have been imagined at the 50th anniversary, when Robert Hutchins asked whether the private research university could even survive. Or at the 75th anniversary, when, with Edward Levy about to assume the presidency, the mounting sounds of the protests that were to mark his era revealed deep rifts within the academic community. Hutchins led, both at home and in the national community of academia, with his steadfast defense of academic freedom and of the university's mandate when they were under attack. A university, he said, must stand for something. And that must be something other than what a vocal minority or majority demand at the moment. And Edward Levy, in the face of a radical movement that aspired to remake the university into an instrument of social and political protest and action, was equally steadfast in speaking to his profound belief that universities are, as he put it, the custodians not only of the many cultures of humanity, but of the rational process itself. The point of our ceremony today, in reasserting the continuity of its founding principles, is not to invoke a false nostalgia or a foolish resistance to change. It is rather to say that to be reminded of the university's origins and history is to be reminded of the university's underlying and enduring strengths, and to hope that future change will proceed in harmony with the essential guidance these offer. You have perhaps heard of yet another child who, when asked to explain the fall of the Roman Empire, replied, "Peer pressure." American higher education is not exactly the Roman Empire, but there is a significant lesson here. Too often, in the current state of higher education, the abundant temptations of submitting to peer pressure have resulted in an all too evident pursuit of faddish or conformist, or in the mere desire to avoid trouble at all costs, or to engage in forms of competition among our universities that will scarcely enhance the robust quality and autonomy of distinctive centers of educational excellence. We are seeing, and too often, a capitulation to ratings wars and to an increasingly distracted and consumerist outlook, coming both from within and from out higher education itself. But on this occasion of our 123rd, 124th, and 125th anniversaries rolled into one, we can, I believe, state the expectation, and indeed the confident belief, that the University of Chicago will remain faithful to its dominant purposes, that it will retain a distinctive identity within the larger academic universe, that it will be unafraid to talk the life and the freedom of the mind as its raison d'etre, and that it will be able to resist the always lurking dangers of complacency, insularity, and humorless self-regard. Finally, it is worth remembering that the core principles and goals of the university, if they are to have genuine life and consequence, require reaffirmation and new realization in each phase of its history. Anniversaries give us a useful, if perhaps arbitrary, way to do just that, as does the ceremony today, in which the different parts of the university have come together as one assembly, embodying Mr. Harper's search for a unity of spirit. Thank you.